Israel has reportedly accepted a bridging proposal for a ceasefire deal in Gaza. Now, what does this really mean and what happens next? Let's dive deeper to understand the complex dynamics at play. Now, the proposal. It was US Secretary of State Antony Blinken who announced that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu had accepted a bridging proposal in peace deal he has proposed. Now, Blinken reached the agreement after a 2.5-hour meeting with Netanyahu. The bridging proposal element of the deal would hold up a ceasefire and release hostages held by Hamas in Gaza. But Hamas accused the US of buying some time for Israel to continue its genocide. Blinken, on the other hand, has not said whether the deal addresses the concerns raised by Hamas or whether it addresses Israel's demands. But what's the urgency? Well, Blinken has now made 9 trips to the Middle East since the Israel-Hamas conflict began in 2023 of October. Well, the US believes that this is the best and maybe the last opportunity for a ceasefire before the situation spirals into a broader regional conflict. But what's the backdrop? Well, the recent targeted killings of top Hezbollah and Hamas figures, which have raised concerns and retaliation and escalation, led to this urgency. With US presidential elections also approaching in November, Washington is keen to avoid a prolonged crisis that could largely impact its foreign policy.
Okay, George.
Well, escalating domestic pressure in the United States. As the death toll in Gaza has now crossed the 40,000 mark, the conflict is also drawing significant attention in the United States of America. During a speech at the Democratic National Convention, President Joe Biden also acknowledged the pro-Palestine protests at the arena and said his administration is working round the clock to secure a ceasefire.
We're working around the clock, my Secretary of State, to prevent a wider war and reunite hostages with their families and surge humanitarian health and food assistance into Gaza now. To end the civilian suffering of the Palestinian people and finally deliver a ceasefire and end this war.
But behind the closed doors, negotiations remain fraught. Hamas has disclosed some of Israel's new demands, urging global pressure on Netanyahu to sign a deal initially proposed by Biden and backed by the UN Security Council in June. Major sticking points include control over the Gaza-Egypt border, the release of hostages, and the presence of Israeli troops in the key areas. Egypt, a key player in the talks, has rejected an Israeli proposal to retain control of the Philadelphia corridor and the Rafah crossing during the ceasefire, reflecting the deep divisions in these discussions. While the regional tensions are also escalating, the conflict's impact is spilling beyond Gaza. In Lebanon, 8 people were injured in Israeli strikes on the Bekaa Valley, according to local health officials. Israel claims that these strikes targeted Hezbollah positions, escalating tensions further in the region. Meanwhile, the deputy commander of Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps has vowed an appropriate response to the assassination of Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh in Tehran, indicating that the conflict could broaden even further. But what is the overall bigger picture? Well, the Gaza ceasefire talks are a delicate balancing act involving multiple players with conflicting agendas. The stakes are very high, with each delay in negotiation costing lives and threatening wider regional unrest. Will a truce be achieved, or are we witnessing the prelude to a larger conflict? This situation remains incredibly fluid, with new developments every day. What's your take on these negotiations? Are they likely to succeed, or is escalation inevitable?